Hi, I hope everyone's doing okay. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different instead of the more usual layout update. I'm going to look at whether it's possible to quickly and importantly cheaply upgrade a O-gauge locomotive to DCC sound. Probably like most of us in the hobby, can't ignore a bargain when it comes along. This Ginty Fowler 3F locomotive is on sale at a certain online retailer at the moment. I won't mention, not being sponsored, but you can probably find it for yourself. It's very cheap, under £140 or around £140. You might be able to get it slightly cheaper like I did if you've got a discount code. So under £140 for this, just under, which I think is pretty remarkable for an O-gauge locomotive. Probably similar to what you pay for a 00 locomotive. Not particularly interested in seeing, but as I say, I can't really resist a bargain. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll look at this. But for my layout, Spring Mill Street, it's a DCC layout, and I'm a big advocate of DCC sound. So to run a locomotive like this, I need DCC installed, and it's got to be sound for me as well. So that would significantly increase the cost of this so-called bargain. So 140 quid or thereabouts for the loco, but then you'd probably have to budget around £100, maybe a little bit more, for a DCC sound decoder, plus the sound file. You might be lucky and get a decoder with a sound file already installed for around £100, but maybe it's more likely to be like £120, plus a speaker, which they're not too expensive, but maybe another £5 to £10 for the speaker, plus on top of that, maybe a Stay Alive as well. Again, Stay Alives, depending on whether you can use a generic one or a branded one, maybe looking around £5 to £10, up to £20 maybe for a branded one. But in this case, another bargain, or potential bargain, is this thing, which you may or may not have heard of in the modelling press. This is a new system that's been relatively recently introduced by Hornby. Fairly innovative and probably directed more at their new TT range of models, although they can be fitted, of course, to 00 models that they retail too. It's a DCC sound decoder, but uniquely, I guess, it can be controlled and importantly updated via Bluetooth. So if you've got a mobile device that supports Bluetooth, you can install an app and upload sounds to the decoder, and then even control the locomotive through your device. Now, I'm not interested in that. I'm certainly not interested in controlling my locomotives via Bluetooth, but the prospect of another bargain calls here, because this particular version of their HMDCC, or HM7000 as I think it's sometimes called, decoder, is the Next 18 version. And there's been some controversy about this particular decoder, because although, as it says here, it's compliant to the NEM 662 standard, in fact it's not wholly compliant. The dimensions of the chip, which I've got here, I'll just put it here, hopefully you can see it. The dimensions don't quite conform to the NMRA standards. In particular, it's a little bit wider than it should be, a little bit taller than it should be, and it's significantly longer than it should be as well. And I believe that's because this extra length here at this end of the decoder chip, this is the socket at this end. This end, I think it actually has like the Bluetooth antenna built into it. That's why they potentially need the extra length here. So why is that of interest? Only because These DCC sound decoders should retail for around about £70, I think, but possibly because of the slight controversy about the dimensions of the decoder, these are also on sale for around half that price. And again, with a bit of a discount, this cost me just over £30, which, if I can get this to work as a full DCC sound decoder, is a significant saving over other brands like, say, Zemo or Locksound, maybe as much as £100 saving potentially, especially when you factor in the fact that this comes with a speaker, a little Sugar Cube style speaker, but with multiple enclosure variations are possible, and the sound file doesn't cost anything as long as you can get a Bluetooth device to connect to it. All the sound profiles from Hornby are currently free, so hence the bargain purchase, or nearly. So this Dayport low gauge locomotive actually has a 21-pin DCC decoder. So at first glance, this Hornby item is not compatible with this. But and they do make a 21-pin version of this, but it's not as cheap. It's not discounted, possibly because of for the reasons I've already mentioned. But then I got to thinking, okay, well, maybe there's another option, and there is, which is this thing, which is basically an adapter which will adapt an X18 to a 21-pin DCC decoder. And this is a retail item, but it's surprisingly cheap, possibly because there's not really a lot to it. Here it is out of the packet. This cost me about £6. Just put it there so you can maybe see it a bit better. And the idea is that you plug the X18 decoder into here, and then this is the interface to the 21-pin DCC decoder. So in summary, we have locomotive for about 140 quid, DCC sound decoder for around £35, and this for around £6. So point of this video is going to be, is it possible to get a DCC sound fitted O-gauge locomotive for around about £180? So podcast style video here. I'm not going to do any editing. I'm just going to try and do this all in one take. It's not going to be an unboxing video, but I am going to try and get the locomotive out onto a service stand, try and fit the decoder with the adapter and a speaker, if possible, put it on the tracks and see if we can get it to work. So just bear with me and let's go. So one thing which full disclosure, the one thing which I have already done, just to save time away from the camera, is I've already fitted a lace style Stay Alive to the Hornby decoder using the solder pads on the back, which are labelled C+ and C-. It comes with a plug, which is next to my thumbnail here, but this lace style Stay Alive, which I got from Digitrains, I think, again, not advertising, just explaining where it came from, doesn't come with a plug. But this particular variant of the Hornby decoder does have solder pads on the back, which are marked C+ and C-. In Hornby's literature, they give some kind of disclaimer about, they suggest you don't use generic style Stay Alives, but I'm willing, given the price, I'm willing to give it a go, particularly because I happen to know that these lace style Stay Alives actually have the onboard charging hardware, which Hornby's chips don't. But I think that will give a level of safeguard. Everything should be okay, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, we'll find out soon. So that was one thing to disclose first. So I've done that. I've already done the soldering. If anyone wants more details about the Stay Alive or how I made the solder connection, just let me know in the comments. But it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to unbox the locomotive now. I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way. Try not to jog the camera. There she is. Say I don't really know very much about steam engines or the prototype. All I do know in this particular instance is it's for my layout at least, it could have some use. It's a fairly versatile small locomotive that would have been used for pickup goods and shunting. So my layouts are mainly going to be a shunting layout. So if this works, then I could potentially make this work on the layout as well. Let's just lift it out. I'm going to try and do that. This one's not too bad actually. There's no wooden plinth or anything like that. I'm just going to pop it in this foam cradle. Just check you can still see that. Yep, you can still see that. Okay, I think. I've already had a quick look at the instructions. So I know there's only 4 screws required to remove the chassis from the body. Not these ones. These are the keeper plate for the wheels and gears. It's these 4, 2 at each end. That's 2. Hopefully you can see this on camera. 3, and the last one here. Okay, now we should hopefully be able to lift the chassis away from the body. Yep, that's coming out okay. I can just feel something snagging. So I'm just being a bit careful here. Okay, yep. I think I've seen this in other reviews. So there's a firebox flicker LED. So I'm just going to unplug that from the main PCB just temporarily. I'll try and remember to put that back later. So there's the chassis. And this thing here is the 21 pin connection where the blanking plug is installed at the moment. So sorry about that. I just paused the video there because the dogs were barking in the background. So I'm going to have a go at removing this blanking plug now. I'll just move this out of the way a bit. I find with these it's best to ease it up first from one side, then from the other, because if you try and pull it off all in one go, usually what happens is it suddenly gives way, which I can feel this one's actually trying to do now, and then what happens is usually you end up bending the pins. Usually if that happens, it's not usually a big problem. You can ease them back into place relatively easily, but it's best to avoid it if you can. Now that I think about it, if I'd been better prepared, I'd have used one of my little plastic tools. This is nearly off now. Just rock. There, it's off. Okay, no problem. So let's see if the adapter works. This is the, sorry, I hope you can see that, the 21 pin adapter to the Next 18. I'm just going to push that into place. Yep, I can see that that's seated well because I can see the tips of all the pins now coming through the socket there. And hopefully I can now just click the Hornby DCC decoder into place. Just have to be, I might have to splay these wires slightly here where I've hooked up the stay alive capacitor, but let's see if there's enough room. Oh yeah, there, that's pretty positively just clicked into place, and there's plenty of room there for the stay alive wires to fit between the gap between the decoder and the 21 pin socket. That's no problem. However, now that I've done that, you can probably see a potential issue, or I can anyway, which is, as already mentioned, the reason why this particular decoder is possibly so cheap is because it doesn't conform completely to the NEM 662 standard for the Next 18 decoders in terms of the format or footprint dimensions of the actual decoder itself. And in this particular case, because the adapters turn the decoder through 90 degrees, the extra length of the Hornby decoder is particularly apparent. I think this portion of the decoder is actually being used for the Bluetooth antenna, which is why it's got this extra length here. But what I can see from this angle, which you probably can't see so well on camera, is that although this is sticking out considerably from the main PCB, it's not sticking out any further than the wheels on the locomotive. And if I just bring this back into shot, hopefully you can see that within the frames of the body shell there's actually a cutout, like a splasher cutout for the tops of the wheel. So I'm hopeful that this might still work. The decoder hopefully will fit in this gap here. And what I can see, again, which you perhaps can't see on camera, is that once it's past this opening anyway, there's a lot more width inside the body shell. The sort of tank shape of the Ginty means that this might fit quite easily, but let's see. I'm just going to secure this out of the way somewhere. Just looking where it might be a good space temporarily to put it. It looks like I can poke it back in there inside the, I guess what would be the smoke box, the end of the boiler of the loco, but for the time being I'm just going to use some black tack and stick it out of the way somewhere. Where would be good, potentially looking at the way that that's going to fit. Trying to see if there's any room at this end here. Just temporarily there might be. Let's just try that. Put the black tack there and we'll see if that fits back inside. Looking at where these go, maybe it won't fit, but we'll try and see what happens. And the last thing which I need to do is fit a speaker. Now, Hornby supply this tiny little speaker with the decoder. It comes with multiple enclosures, so you can get the best sound out of it. If this works, I'm probably replace this with one of the speakers in my cache of speakers. I've got loads in a box, but just for the purpose of this video, I might as well use this because it comes rather handily with this plug, which I can put straight into the decoder socket. So just bear with me. I don't think this will be too fiddly. If I can get it the right way up, which is possibly that way up actually. Just put a little kink in the wires there to help it go in. Yep, that seems to be in. And I've just put a blob of black tack on the back of this. There seems to be a space here where there's like this representation of the inside motion with a space just underneath the main PCB, which I'm going to that's where I'm going to put the speaker just temporarily for now. As I say, if this works, then a bigger speaker will probably fit somewhere else. There seems to be quite a lot of space actually inside here. And it's always best to fit the biggest speaker that you possibly can if it will fit. But let's just try this for the time being, just to see whether the principle of getting it to try and work will actually happen. Just take this out of the cradle and reconnect this firebox flicker while I remember. Hopefully I've got this the right way up. Yep, looks like I have. Okay, and I'll just see if this is actually going to drop down. Just going to tuck all these wires up inside it for the moment. If this works, I'll come back and put these all the way more securely with some Kapton tape or something like that. So, okay, so the first thing which I can feel is that the body is going to go over the decoder. That's not an issue. but where I put the stay alive isn't going to work. So I'm just going to reposition this temporarily. Oh, looks like in the process of putting the speaker lead on, I think I've actually disconnected the decoder, so that was worthwhile noticing now. Yep, it's the actual speaker lead there, which is pretty close to the edge of the socket, which is causing the issue. Is that actually in? I think it is in. It feels like I can feel some positive resistance there when I try to pull it out, so I think that is actually in. So what I'm going to do with this, just to get it out of the way, just going to poke it up in there for now with a bit of black tack. Hopefully it's going to stay put. And we'll try again. So that has gone over the decoder. Just see if it's going to drop back down. Feels like it is. Let me just have a look from here. It feels like it might be resting on the speaker now, actually. Okay, sorry if you can hear the dogs barking again. I'm just going to pause the video. Sorry about that. Dogs barking again, but I think I've just about got this wiggled down. I'm just going to tuck this speaker lead out of the way. It doesn't feel like it's fully down, possibly. I've got a feeling the stay alive capacitor is getting in the way again, but one thing which I can tell is that the there's plenty of room here for the decoder, so the decoder's not actually getting in the way. So let's just see whether we've got any life at all out of it. I'm going to put it on the tracks here, which I've got wired up in service mode, not operation mode. In other words, programming on programming track rather than programming on main. Whenever you're fitting a DCC decoder for the first time, I think it's always worthwhile just checking that you can read CVs on the programming track rather than just plonking it straight onto your main track, which will have full track voltage. If you know anything about DCC, you'll be aware that in service mode or programming on the programming track, it's a much smaller current supply, and it's only activated while you're reading and writing CVs. Otherwise it's not actually activated at all. So it's perfectly safe to put the locomotive on the track and do some testing in this mode. So just bear with me. Okay, so the locomotive sitting on track. Sorry, you can't see very much. Let me just reposition the camera slightly so you can see a bit better. There, hopefully you can see that. I'll just turn on the command station. So that's command station turned on, and I'm just going to use my lens controller to try and read the decoder. I'll try and do this on camera. So we want programming on programming track, and we'll try and read the loco address. That seemed to work. We saw the locomotive move, and we've got an address 3, which is what I'd expect. So we'll go one step further, and we'll actually key a new address in for the locomotive. 680 or maybe 7680 would be a good number. That seems to have worked. So what I'll do is I'll just try and read that back. Yep, that seems to work. So because we've had success now at reading and writing on service mode, I'm going to just do a switch over on the command station and put this track into operations mode. Otherwise, I'm going to just do the switch over, so this piece of track becomes not a programming track anymore, but more like a main line. So just bear with me. Okay, so that's done, and a good sign is there's been no blue smoke or anything like that. So if we go back to the controller now, I'm just going to reset the address. We said it was 7680. Let's see if we can get it to move. Yes, it's moving. Well, that's pretty successful. Let's see if it will make some sound. I haven't got the function mapping in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that function 2 or 3 is going to be a whistle or something like that. So we'll try one of those. Yep, that seemed to work. I'm not sure, it might be pretty quiet, but I think that's a reflection of how small the speaker is. I say I'll try and get that fixed. Okay. And I'll see, F1 presumably starts all the sounds, so let's try that. General hissing noises that steam engines make, I guess. I haven't got a lot of track here, but I'll see if I can get it to maybe chuff a bit. Yeah, that seems to be working. So I think that's it for this video. So perhaps rather unexpectedly, what I've done is I'll just turn the sound off so you can hear me. Proved that it is possible to buy a bargain O-gauge locomotive and fit it with an adapter and Hornby's Next 18 DCC sound decoder, and get a fully working O-gauge locomotive with DCC sound for it would be around about £180, possibly even a bit less, like I say, with a discount like I got. What else to mention? One thing I'll do, and maybe I'll show in a follow-up video, I'll have a play to try and get the Stay Alive fully fitted out of the way and a much bigger speaker fitted. Hopefully we'll be able to see and hear, more importantly, what this sounds like with a much better speaker fitted. And the other thing I can do, I'll have a look on the Hornby's website and try and upload a more suitable sound profile. What you heard just then is the one which comes already installed on the decoder. I'll see if I can find something which is a bit more like a 3F. I'm not sure if Hornby actually have this model. They've probably got something similar, and we'll see what that sounds like. I hope that was enjoyable. I'll perhaps do a follow-up video if I can make some more progress with this. Otherwise, the next video will be back to another progress update on the layout, which you can see underneath here, which is the Spring Mill Street. Thanks for listening, everybody.